Hi, and welcome to the School Health Educators Podcast, where we discuss health education and how to best teach health ed in the K 12 setting. Hi, and welcome to the School Health Educators Podcast. I'm your host, Lori Reichel, and today's episode is going to focus on habits of mind. And what's really neat is I have a guest who teaches at the elementary school level. Sometimes folks don't think that there are positions out there for the elementary school level in health education. I've taught at that level, and our guest today teaches at that level. And our guest, her name is Janice Mix. Would you like to say hello, Janice, to our audience?
Yes, hi, my name is Janice Mix, and I am so happy to be here talking with other educators, talking with yourself, and sharing what ideas I might have.
Well, I thank you so much for your time today, Janice. And can you give us a little bit of your background and maybe how you got to be in the position of teaching elementary health?
Absolutely. Well, I first started teaching when I was 22, right out of the gate, so to speak. And I was hired as a 410 phys ed teacher, which quickly turned into both a physical education and health education job. And so my first experience was teaching middle school health. But at the position where I was at, they asked for me to choose. And at that time, I chose physical education. So I taught 10 years physical education. And then I stayed home for 10 years and I returned to teaching after that about 10 years ago. So now I've been teaching elementary health for 10 years and I absolutely love it. I was hired as a health teacher. I got to teach a little bit of middle school phys ed, which was wonderful because that's what I was familiar with. And teaching elementary health was going to be this whole new adventure. And I have just absolutely fallen in love with it because um, everything, all the SEL that everybody, all the students need today, with mental health being what it is, it's just a critical subject for students to learn about, and I just absolutely adore it.
I also have to toot the horn here that our guest today, Janice, is a Teacher of the Year for Central Zone New York. Congratulations for that. I'm so honored again to be speaking with you. And I don't know if everybody realizes the high standards that we have in New York State. So to receive this honor means you know what you're doing.
Thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
like to think so.
I have to say, it's not like some people think that like to get an award, it's because you do like political things or you're just really nice to other people. And New York State is not like that, as well as in a lot of other states. It's about people recognize that you're updated, that you're student centered, you know what you're talking about. And even the title for today, I know I said this episode is going to focus on habits of mind, but your title that you provided for me, Janice, is Integrating Habits of Mind to Teach Standards and Life Skills. I I think that's great because health education, we're about skills, life skills, and we're the social emotional learning experts.
Yes, we are. I when I first started teaching, there was a second step program. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's a
Mhm.
national program, and our counselors push in for a 30-minute class time teaching these social emotional skills through the second step curriculum. And they were short a teacher. They weren't going to be able to do the coverage. And I just remember like, well, I can do it. And they're like, you can? I'm like, oh, absolutely. This is
Mhm.
all of my curriculum. So I can absolutely teach this curriculum out because this is what I teach anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, they let me do it. It was great.
So the title that you gave me, Integrating Habits of Mind to Teach Standards and Life Skills, what does that mean to you?
I guess what that means to me, so when I think of social emotional skills, I think a lot about self-awareness and self-management. I think everything kind of starts there. If we don't have an awareness of something we want to improve or change, it's very hard to even manage. So self-awareness is just like at the heart of the matter, along with self-management. Those are the two like beginning steps of our social emotional skills. And what I believe the habits of mind do is lay a foundation to be able to increase your self-awareness as well as your self-management. Now, those are two of the habits of mind, but
Hmm.
those two habits, it's hard to learn or follow along some of those other habits of mind until you have that self-awareness. I'll give you an example. During COVID, I remember thinking that I did not want to be flexible anymore, although I knew that that was what I needed to do. So I had the self-awareness of like, I'm feeling tired of all the changes that are happening. And I said, well, what do I need to be able to manage these changes? Well, I need to be flexible. And I remember thinking, well, I don't want to be flexible anymore, but I need to be flexible. So again, that's the language that I needed to self-talk my way through that situation. The language of, this is taking some flexibility here that's becoming a challenge, but I knew what I needed to dig into and to find. And I did find my flexibility and I made it through. But it's very helpful to label. A lot of times therapists will say you got to name it to tame it. So if
Hmm.
you can't name it, then you can't tame it, you can't fix it. And so these habits of mind start to give students, children, a way to articulate what they might need to navigate their way through various situations.
I appreciate you saying that because it's as simple as noting how you're feeling in your body, yet that simplicity is really challenging for people because to and I'll tease some of the students that I train to be future health educators. They'll be like, this is what they'll say. I feel, and then they go, I feel that. And I'm like, no, 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 no. You said feel. Tell me a feeling word. I need you to take a pause. What are you feeling? And we actually have to bring out those feeling wheels so they can see all the different feelings so they can slow down and go, wait a minute, there are so many feelings. What is it that I'm actually feeling inside? So it's simple, yet it's not so simple.
Not so simple. No. And I guess the habits of mind are more, they're more than attributes, but at a very simplistic level, they are attributes. So they're not feeling words. So name it to tame it is definitely referring to naming the feeling to be able
Hmm.
to tame the feeling. However, these um, attributes, these thinking skills, critical thinking skills, are like another layer on top of that feelings literacy that helps for that articulation or helps for figuring out what you might need to do to get to past it or to get to the next step or to um, solve the problem in an effective way so that you're happier with the outcome.
For those of you listening in, if you want to watch this on the School Health Educators YouTube channel, do that. I keep on smiling. I bring that up because as Janice is talking, I keep on smiling because I totally get that. It's not as simple as the feeling. That's one layer, but it's increasing, well, critical thinking, like you said. In which, before we continue, can you just give an overview of the habits of mind, what that includes?
Sure. So there are 16 habits, and the authors Art Costa and Betta Kotelek wrote this book. And in this book, they describe the or critical thinking skills that are 16 of them. And so, like I mentioned before, one of them is thinking about your thinking, which is metacognition or self-awareness. And that's really where it starts, along with managing your impulsivity, right? Managing the impulse in with your spoken language, with your written language, with your actions, so that you can apply these critical thinking skills. So I'll list off some of these 16 habits. One of them is persisting. This is a term that health and physical educators use all the time, persist, right? But we have to persist with things that we like as well as what we don't like. So it's one thing to persist through a task that you is not a preferred task. Say homework's not a preferred task for a child. They're persisting through something that they don't like to do. But they also have to persist through things you do like to do, like basketball. If you want to become a better basketball player, well, there's no better way to become a better basketball player than to practice with intention, and you're persisting. So we, as humans, we need to be able to persist through various tasks, whether we prefer them or not. Um, and then striving for accuracy is another habit. Now, that's a really important habit, right? To strive for accuracy. Is your written work accurate? Is your math homework correct? Are you teaching, if you're a teacher, are your teaching targets what you want them to be? Is your learning objective lining up with a standard or what you feel and the state feels, or your school, your community needs? Is it in alignment? So striving for accuracy is a habit. And we all make mistakes. That's part of being human. But what I like about like this label is I can say to myself, well, I guess we did not remember to strive for accuracy, right? Which is, trying to find a little humor with it. And that is also a habit of mine, finding humor. So being able to use humor to help yourself and to help others. So finding humor is a habit. Listening with understanding and empathy. I love this habit. Really listening to understand. This is something we talk about through our health standards when we're teaching our students about communication, but really, really listening to understand, right? Not to respond, but to understand. Um, and along with that, there's one that's called thinking and communicating with clarity and precision. There's a habit that talks about applying past knowledge to a new situation. There's a habit of questioning and posing problems. This is a great one. This is how we even questioning when someone's talking to you, if you're listening to understand, then you're going to practice the habit of questioning and posing problems, or at least questioning, right? Not posing a problem, but you're going to question because you're curious and you want to keep understanding what the person's saying. And so that's uh, that habit. Then
I,
we have working interdependently, thinking interdependently. There is a habit of creating and imagining. So being curious and creating as you're questioning someone to listen with understanding and empathy, you can start to see how I just listed 3 habits, right? They're all interconnected. I used the habit of wonderment the other day with my students. We're talking about different types of families. And it's really important to me that my students remember to manage their impulsivity. I don't want anybody to have a blurt out about a particular style of family and say, oh, wait, what did you say? Your family has what? Because I worry that that might hurt another child's feelings. So we talk about, managing our impulsivity and responding with curiosity. Like curious George would be excited to play with toilet paper. And so if you could just be excited when you hear about different types of families, then you're going to practice wonderment. And then we move on to talking about listening with understanding and empathy. So we're really listening. Uh, and there are 2 more that I haven't mentioned, or 3. One of them is taking a responsible risk. Now, that is something like being on this podcast is a responsible risk, right? For me to come out and talk to everybody who wants to listen about health education. Uh, and then remaining open to continuous learning. This is one that I sometimes wish adults practiced a little bit more. Uh,
I agree.
so like, I'm not sure if they're open to continuous learning, but then again, I think sometimes adults are not in a headspace for learning. They're in fight, flight, or freeze, which
Mhm.
is maybe why they're not able to be continuously learning. And then the last one I'll mention, and this was a lot I went through really quickly, is gathering data through all senses. And I love this one because using your senses to learn, you think about how a baby learns or a toddler learns, and they are learning through their senses, right? They want to put everything in their mouth, much to moms and dads' dismay, like don't choke on that. But that is how part of the way they learn. And so we still, even as young kids and adults, we learn through our senses. And so remembering to gather data through different ways is uh, really impactful for people.
Okay, I'm going to be really honest with you here, Janice. And this might put you on the spot, but I have a feeling some people that are listening in are thinking, you teach elementary school.
Mhm.
How in the world can you teach elementary school age young people these types of concepts? You know, even for people with high school, with high school kids, they might be like, that's a challenge for that. But elementary, can you like expand a little bit on that?
Absolutely. So just to go into the background a little bit, I where I teach, there is a K-12 building that is nationally recognized in habits of mind. So I do need to say that they come to me uh, already understanding a basic understanding of these habits. And I have a big board. One of my dry erase boards is covered. Here, I'm going to hold this up. It's going to be backwards, but you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. Oops, it's blurry. Let's see. Hmm, maybe not. It's not going to come. Oh, there it is. There it is.
There, yep.
You can see there's these images, and they're cute images with words and descriptions. And I have an entire bulletin board. So each habit is a 13 by 13. And if I'm teaching a concept, I will turn to that wall in the classroom. There's something called defronting the classroom.
Hmm.
So there's no front wall of the classroom. So I use three. I don't use all four, but I use three of the sides of my classroom. And one side is like the habits of mind side. So when I'm on the habits of mind side, I have this big board with all the habits, each one being a 13 by 13. And I'll say to the students, all right, we're going to do some group work together today. And when we're talking about our group work, I know that we are going to be needing to practice some of our habits. What habits are going to help you today as you
Yes.
do your group work? Can you tell me? I want you to think about it. So a lot of times I'll do this motion where I pull like I'm pulling a hat on and I'll say, okay, we're going to do a 10-second think. And so I try to give students processing time so that you don't have the same hands up all the time. And then after
10
the think
seconds.
time, I'll say, all right, what habits do you think that we might be able to use? And in truth, I could spend the entire class, all 16 habits. You probably could always find a reason to use a habit for
Hmm.
whatever the task might be. But for group work, students often say things like, oh, thinking interdependently, Miss Mix, we'll have to work together. Absolutely. Being flexible. Oh, okay, yeah. Why do you think you might need to practice flexibility? Well, because, someone might have a different idea than mine. All right, yes, okay, flexibility. And then they might go on, or maybe they don't hit a habit that I'm really want them to think about. So I'll say something like, well, I was really thinking you might need to be managing your impulsivity during your group work. Why was I thinking managing impulsivity? Does anyone want to guess? And then they'll say, well, we have to stay on task and we shouldn't, like you said about being flexible, shouldn't judge each other. We should try to be nice to each other when we're having this discussion about this scenario. And so it's just like when you do class rules on the first day of school, the students know the rules, but you need to make sure that they know that you know that there are rules to follow. So it's the
Right.
same way with the group work. You're just laying that foundation and I'm able to use the habits of mind to do that. So it's in my case, because they're already somewhat familiar with them, I'm reminding them of the language, showing them the icon, and they're making that connection. And then at the end of the group work, I could say, how do you think you did? Do you think that you used the habits? Which habit do you think you needed to use the most? Was there one that you just didn't use? And you know, maybe in reflection, you think, oh, I guess I wasn't very flexible, or I could have listened a little bit better. There isn't always time to do all of that. But when there is, that reflection piece can be really powerful to get students to that next level of intrinsically learning about that habit.
Thank you. Thank you for answering that question. And I have to say, I'm impressed. 10-second think. I know not all educators use that, yet we have to pause and allow that time to pass after we ask a question, provide a prompt. That's excellent that you raised that. In addition, you remind me that when we work with younger children, they do retain a lot, and we have to model, and if we teach them these habits earlier in life, they're going to continue them as long as they're reinforced as they age. So that's phenomenal that you're working with these younger people and providing this type of education to them. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a real believer in the habits because as once I learned about them as an adult, I really felt like they helped me personally, just
Yeah.
because I'm a team leader and I have a wonderful group of people, but they can be very differing opinions
Hmm.
and all passionate about what they're doing for different reasons. And it was my first time having the opportunity to be a team leader of this larger group of 12 fantastic educators. So I was immediately thinking like, how am I going to do this to keep everybody feeling like a team, but also try to help bring us together. And I just started thinking of like, well, what habits are going to help me with my group
Right.
work through our challenges?
Yep. So earlier you provided an example of wonderment, the habit that children can be open to hearing differences, specifically for approaching different types of families.
Mhm.
Do you have another example you can provide of how, so like the health, if I say curriculum, or the skills slash content area, the functional health knowledge, how habits of mind work with those other things?
Yes. Well, um, let's say we're talking about uh, advocacy. All right. When we're talking about advocacy, speaking up for yourself, I might talk about the habit of mind of taking a responsible risk, you know, because it feels asking for what you need or trying to help speak up for what somebody else needs might feel scary and might feel uncomfortable. And I give examples of times I might have had to advocate for myself as a student in high school. They like
Hmm.
that story. Kids love stories. So, um, or if a student wants to advocate for someone who they think is being bullied. So that goes along with safety as well. We talk about personal safety and health or community safety. And so this has to do with safety as well, being able to advocate and ask for what you or somebody else needs. And one of the skills for that would be taking a responsible risk. I could talk to students about it in terms of um, persisting. You might have to tell one person and then persist to tell another adult. We talk about it in terms of communicating or thinking with clarity and precision, to
Hmm.
really try to be explaining what you think happened as carefully as you can and as accurately as you can, striving for accuracy. So, um, as I'm talking, I'm listing these habits, which, if you're not familiar with the habits, you might not hear them as
Hmm.
I'm speaking them, but I'm striving for accuracy as a habit and thinking with clarity and precision. I mentioned that's a habit. So these are all habits that students can apply to that type of a situation where they're advocating.
Wonderful. Thank you. As we come to the end of our recording today, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Hmm. Well, I think uh, when it comes to teaching social emotional wellness as part of our health curriculum, I'm a big believer in teaching the different parts of the brain and making sure students understand fight, flight, or freeze and why that's happening. And I talk about it in terms of an owl, a dog, and a hippopotamus. And
Hmm.
that works well for them. The dog alerts them to danger. and is barking, right? And the owl, we want to keep the owl there, but sometimes owl flies away. And so if um, when I use the habits of mind, and I'm talking about the parts of the brain, like managing your impulsivity, for example, is when maybe we're left in a situation where owl has flown away. And so we need owl to come back. Um, but when students can make that connection, that managing their impulse is like
Hmm.
catching the dog as it's coming up. Like we do, I also use the hand model. Signal, I think his
Hmm.
name is, hand model of the brain. And we use that as well, which refers to flipping your lid, which is the dog barking, the amygdala is triggered.
Hmm.
And we talk about how being able to get the lid back down or catching it before it goes up is managing the impulse. And in some situations, of course, not every situation, if it's true dangerous situation, then we're very thankful for the dog because it's
Right.
keeping us safe. But
Hmm.
when we don't want it up, if we can catch it and being able to emphasize to students that they are so that I'll say to them, you're so young right now. You are learning this. You are going to flip your lid and then you're going to realize like, oh, it happened. Okay. What can I do next time? And so to give yourself grace and to be kind and speak kindly to yourself, I tell the
Hmm.
students, and that you're just trying to learn to do this. I say there are lots of adults that have not learned this. When I was in school, nobody taught it to me this way. But if you can just keep practicing, because anything we practice, we get better at, and we just want to practice trying to catch the lid before it flips, if unless it's, an emergency.
Yeah. Very good. Do you have a particular favorite part of the brain?
Well, we mostly just go back and forth between the dog and the
Okay.
owl, and we talk mostly about that. But the hippopotamus is the hippocampus, and that's where our
Hmm.
memories are. And I have puppets I use with my terrible accents, but the kids are fine with my accents. That's one
Hmm.
very nice thing about teaching elementary school students is they think it's fantastic. And I can talk about, owl, of course, has a British accent. Um,
Okay.
dog is kind of goofy, and hippo is southern. And your hippocampus swallows the memories down in the big mouth, and dog kind of freaks out. And like you wouldn't give your math homework to your dog. So if you flipped your lid during a math test, then you're in trouble because you've given basically the dog to do the test, which that's no good. So we need Owl back because Owl has a British accent, which everybody, and the kids all think of Harry Potter.
Hmm.
So yeah, so that works really well for the Owl. But it's a great concept for them to understand because now I'm teaching addiction and a little bit into recreational drugs. It's very lightly done, mostly just teaching addiction because we have gaming addiction,
Hmm.
right? Gambling addiction. So it doesn't just have to be a substance. But I'm able to tell the students, I say basically, with alcohol or marijuana or some of these other drugs, owl has flown away and their faces there get big and they're like, what? I'm like, you heard me. Owl's flown away and you're left with a really crazy dog and it's not a good situation. And they know exactly what I mean because I talk about it. That's the
Right.
second, wall in the classroom.
Hmm.
But they know those because it comes up all the time.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot to make those voices, but there's a part of me that wants to hear them, but I'm going to suppress that. I'm going to practice a habit of mind and suppress that. I do love the idea of puppets too, because I was trained in a puppet program many, many years ago. It's fun to bring out puppets with children. So kudos again to you. And I thank you again for being here, a reminder of the importance of the brain too. Uh, if we have listeners that want to get trained more about the habits of mind, is there a resource you recommend?
There is just go to the Habits of Mind Institute. It's an
Okay.
international uh, website, but they are based here in the United States. There was just a local conference in upstate New York that I went to, and you can be trained. So I'm a habits of mind practitioner. I have my certification. Um, so they have certifications that you can go through the training. They teach you first is awareness. So that's kind of where we started today,
Hmm.
awareness of what the habits of mind are and how they might be able to help you even personally beyond just your students. And then the second part it is implementation, different ways as to how you might be able to implement these habits of mind into your classroom. And the third one is assessment. So being able to help your students really assess whether they're using the habits of mind.
Wonderful. Well, Janice, thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations on your Zone Health Educator of the Year award. I think it's really the Health Education Zone Award, so congratulations on that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Janice's email address in today's description if you'd like to connect with her. You can also check out the Habits of Mind Institute. So, would you like to say goodbye to our audience, Janice?
I would love to. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And if you want to drop an email, I'm happy to write back. Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful opportunity, and I love what you're doing for health educators. So thank you, Lori, so much for what you do for all of us.
Thank you. And I love your professionalism throughout this whole entire process, even setting up a time to connect. I really appreciate it. Just to let you know, the other day, Janice and I were supposed to Zoom, and Zoom was down. And Janice was so kind, emailing and, like, okay, how can we resolve it this way? We decided to reschedule, in which apparently she's practicing these habits of mind. So again, kudos to you. And a reminder to our listeners, please follow this podcast and share it with others. This is the only podcast that is specific to health educators working in the pre-K through 12 setting. There's also the website, the schoolhealtheducators.org website, that more and more resources are slowly being added onto that website when I have a chance to catch up. Actually, some things were just updated by Catriona, who helped create the original website. And last but not least, thank you so much for everything that you're all doing. The young people need us, so please continue to remain updated, being empathetic to your students, and being there. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and have a lovely day. Stay well, folks.